I'm Vance Bastian here with my co-host SA Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 8 Episode 40 Entertainment Review. Baz and I will be giving our thoughts and reviews of Last Call, when a serial killer stalked queer New York, and exploring how it relates to queer life, as well as discussing its strengths and flaws. Um, all right, let me give you the official IMDb blurb before I point out how this relates to my history. As the AIDS crisis intensifies in the early 1990s, homophobia and hate crimes increase, and a serial killer preys on gay men in New York City by infiltrating the queer nightlife to identify his victims. 4 episodes, it's on Max, actually an HBO documentary production. Well worth it. And in 1994, when I graduated college, this was all over the news. And even though I was not in New York City, it scared me away from the bars, fair and square. And I don't think I'd ever been able to put into words why I stayed away from the bars until I saw this again just this week as an adult. And I realized and connected all the dots in my life to the events of this documentary.
Yes, because
It's
it is
harrowing.
quite a gruesome tale. It's not just that they were off like they got shot or something. No, it's much more gruesome than that. Um,
Mhm.
what I liked about the series, one, it was beautifully produced. Even the archival footage, they did a really good job with. But what I wanted to highlight in this is that the a lot of series now, documentaries for true crime, before used to focus on the weirdness or the outcast of the person perpetrating it. This one focuses on the people who were victimized. So the
Mhm.
victims are the stars, quote unquote, of this story, in that it
Mhm.
focuses on their contributions, where they were, who the people were that were around them that cared about them, and even after their tragic and horrific death, the growth and the healing that has come from each of the family members and people around them who went through this horrible escapade that lasted for almost 20 years to finally see some justice done. And
Mhm.
I really commend the documentary crew for taking that tact and going down that track and focusing it entirely, and only leaving the last little bit of the last episode where you get a smidgen of who this fucker was. And I liked that it focused more on the other side of the fence. That's how we should be doing these kinds of documentaries and these kind of true crime cases. Focus on the victims, give very little to the perpetrators. So I really loved it.
Yeah, I actually, when I saw that aspect of this storytelling, and I clued into that by the second episode of this documentary, I realized that this style of storytelling, where you focus on the lives that were affected,
Mhm.
is actually done interactively in the 911 or 9/11 exhibit in New York. The overwhelming majority of that exhibit is about the city and its people, and just a very small, like maybe 10% of that exhibit is actually about the perpetrators of the crime. And this documentary did something very similar.
Mhm.
It's a very good style of storytelling because it lets you see the ripples before you see the rock that was thrown.
Mhm. And
I like.
you get to see in the final episode how all of these different families and friends that were around these people
Hmm.
all started to come together and realize that they held in common the fact that they lost a loved one, and that in by being present, being available, being there for the whole process. And I can't remember. You have to give me, if you think this is true. The trans woman that was in there that was talking about, and she was friends with the guy at the piano bar. Well, there was two piano bars,
Yep.
but the Five Oaks.
Right.
Wasn't she the one that was in
I think so.
the Stroll?
Yeah, I think that was her.
I think that was her too. And I loved that. If that is her, I really loved that they included her story, part of the story in it,
Hmm.
because it's so important that when we talk about the queer community, we don't just limit, because, as queer people, and we have our own tribe that we hang with, they're across the spectrum, typically.
Hmm.
And So why wouldn't a trans woman have some input into this story, especially if she knew him? So, the
Hmm.
whole idea that we should include all the voices from our community who are affected and are part of the story. That's another reason why I love this documentary, because you got some of that put in. You had the straight allies, you had the people within the community. It was just a really well-rounded thing. And I particularly love the moment where the daughter of the first victim was in New York during a pride parade and heard the song "I Am What I
Yeah.
Am" from La Cage aux Folles, and it brought everything together about her father. And I just thought that was
Yeah.
a lovely, lovely touch that they included that in the
Hmm.
documentary, because it showed the healing process she had gone through to get to that point. So loved it.
Um,
Absolutely.
another thing I would like viewers to take away from this is two of the primary people interviewed actually worked in the Anti-Violence League in New York,
Mm-hmm.
which had been established to help against queer violence specifically, especially back in the days when the police were perpetrating some of the violence. But that organization still exists today.
Yes,
And
it
that's an
does.
important thing to know is you have a safe space if you're in specifically New York City. Leagues like that do exist elsewhere. You'll have to obviously search for their specific names if there's one near you, but it's important to know that these resources exist for you in the event that you're the target of a crime.
Right. Right. And you always seek out the local lesbian, gay group in your area or in a nearby city. If you're in the rural areas, they have resources charted that can point you in the right direction for any kind of help you may need. The Trevor Project is around as well. Not trying to put more stuff on their plate because they are very overburdened, but um, it is a resource that you can go to if you are in a rural area and you don't know who to call. You can start there, and they at least will have phone numbers and other people that you can come into contact with. That's one of the things that our community is really good at, is networking. So
Hmm.
use it to your advantage if you're in a troubled place.
Hmm. Numbers?
Mine are fives across the board. Primarily because even though you have like art direction and costuming, it's not really that kind of a story. But I will say that the art direction, in the fact of how they used any kind of graphics, how they use it, it all kind of lent itself to continuing the story forward. I loved a lot of the drone or over the head shots because it gave you the sense of how isolated these incidents were in these backwater areas of New Jersey that were really kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I really liked the way that some of that came across. So the production team did a really good job. So I'm kind of giving them a five in the art direction and costuming area, primarily because they're the people behind the camera who still have to contribute and add to the story.
Hmm.
I think queer themes presented, we had representation, and I think that it's definitely a bellwether and a bright shining beacon on top of the hill of how to do true crime, especially within the queer community. This is the way you do it.
Hmm. My script, screenplay, directing, and queer themes were fives like yours for exactly the reasons you mentioned. The rest of mine were 4.5s. It's still a damn good documentary,
Mhm.
but it's a documentary which you got to be in the mood for. Um,
It's true crime.
yeah, so it didn't blow my socks off, but it was really good, like grippingly good. I actually thought I was going to do like one a night. I binged it all in an afternoon.
Yeah, because of the way that the story continues, you kind of just go, wait, let's follow that. It does do that bit of hook and draw, from one episode to the next. So
Hmm.
until you get the resolution that all the family and friend members get, you really don't feel like you can fully breathe again. So
Right.
that's really good storytelling.
Yep. All right. Written on the Edge is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Support us on Patreon, follow us on YouTube, recommend us to a friend, help us get our numbers up just a little bit higher. Tune in Friday for our interview with Anthony Van Leeuwen, and we'll see you back on the show.
Bye now. Charlie Wave.
I guess.
No, it has to be fast and low.
closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.